Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to bid you a warm welcome on behalf of Lega Coop. I would like to thank this opportunity to thank all of you, and I would like to thank the organizers for extending an invitation to today's important event. Following different presentations, especially the lectures given by Mr. Bruno and Mr. Borzaga, who spoke with great enthusiasm and who were also the source of great inspiration when it comes to development of cooperative movement, my task is far from being simple. I don't want to repeat some figures and numbers which have already been raised by our previous speakers. In Italy, the cooperative sector is very important and it represents a very important element for development of different sectors of economy. However, together with you, I will present you with some food for thought. In the past, we often have different problems. I will just briefly highlight some of them because I have just 15 minutes available for my presentation. The economic crisis, as well as other historic events, reveal to us that if we are to meet challenges, it is not just enough to resort to traditional forms of thinking and action. We need to think twice as to how and what should be done. We need to develop new scenarios. We need to pool resources. We need to pool resources among researchers, scientists, and those developing different strategies. In the past, it was regarded that merely big capitalist societies play an important role, while cooperatives are marginal entities, something which should be confined to the dustbin of history. However, the situation today clearly reveals that cooperatives, in fact, are the key factor which will enable us to come out of this crisis. We need different paths in order to successfully deal with the crisis, and cooperatives play a very important role in this respect. Europe today shows that we are living in times where nothing is certain, nothing is guaranteed. No individual measure can give us this complete sense of certainty which we had in the past. The conditions of living are undergoing radical changes. Everybody wishes for changes to be the changes for the better. For some time, we have witnessed economic growth. We have been certain that things will develop even further. But then the year of 2008 struck, and everybody was surprised. This resulted in the high rate of employment. We lost competitiveness. Social rights have been undermined. Banks and companies had serious problems. All these factors have a profound impact on our day-to-day lives. Social norms, cultural elements show that we have different vulnerabilities within our society, but we also have a common mission. We need to fight for our ethical values. In fact, our society is extremely weak. It is extremely fragile. It is plagued by corruption, which shocked the entire society globally and profoundly. And not just individuals are affected, the entire market suffers as well. This crisis, in fact, had an impact on the deepest layers of our identity. And this was the bedrock of our society in the past. It was very important for our policies, for our economies. This crisis is the crisis of an old system. And now we are entering a new chapter. We need to come up with new concepts in order to develop our world. We need to have a different mission. We need to have different objectives. In fact, we need to go back and we need to see how things were done in the past. We are codependent. This codependence is our faith. It is very important to realize what is this codependence, because today in the world we are seeing widespread injustice. Things differ. We have widespread poverty while other parts of the world are extremely rich. Then there are different fluctuations, different threats. Then there is a problem of energy and water supply. Financial markets suffer as well. All these areas are at the same time also a challenge in terms of passing new legislation. We also have a number of ethical issues and challenges. Then we need to introduce changes because our political system is also the root cause of the crisis. But in the past, what was the reason for our economies being stable? This is also a very important reflection. When capitalism prevailed, when it took the world by storm, we have been able to see that in the long run, this system is no longer sustainable. Hence, we need alternative models, we need something different. But how to best develop these alternatives, where to go? What is important to note is to first go one step back. We need to change our models. We need to change our mentality. The situation is extremely complex. We need to introduce new systems. We need to have different forms of organization. We need to have different functioning of our companies, of society as a whole, of our institutions. We need to seek good mixes. We need to find best ways for cooperation. We need to know that nobody can be isolated. We are interdependent. If we talk about companies, if we talk about the value of pluralism, this goes beyond diversity, not just in terms of size, characteristics, of whether these companies are private or public. No, we also talk about mission, about objectives, on best ways to cooperate. And in this respect, we need to consider cooperatives, social enterprises, then mutual insurances. All this has an impact on pluralism. And this doesn't merely rest on financial, on monetary objectives. It is also based on people, not just personal interests, but also those interests which go beyond individuals. There is also a need to show solidarity, reciprocity, help. And cooperatives are also at the same time company operating within our economy. They are part of our economic system. They are, in a way, a form of company. But, as we have heard already, we have consumers, we have individuals who are not merely interested to generate profits, as is the case with other forms of companies. Cooperatives pursue different objectives, so added value and profits are not the ultimate aim of cooperatives' operations, but they are invested in development of cooperatives in the future and long-term benefits of its members. When we talk about asset locks, this will be available for future generations. They will undergo changes throughout time. They will make sure that those who will be members of cooperatives in the future will be able to flourish and prosper. Then an issue of training, market access available to all our members. Then high-quality services, reliability of services as well as products, environment protection. Then training, developing social capital. All these values are clearly reflected in the operation of cooperatives, and in other companies they are often overlooked. Cooperatives also have this dimension of future generations, to raise capital for future generations. In my opinion, cooperatives are very efficient forms of operation, and I believe that they can, in fact, take over the role of public companies in the future. Cooperatives can also contribute to the diversity of economies, and they can make sure that we address different social problems, that we offer and provide services as well as products to the entire community. In other words, we follow the principles of plurality on account of its specific structural features. Cooperatives, in fact, prevent for cooperatives to make the same mistakes as it was the case with public as well as private companies before the crisis. As we have heard from our previous contributors, money, assets, are just one of important elements which need to be addressed. Cooperatives are more important, and this is needed in order to confront successfully the challenges of the future. Cooperatives are based on democratic principles and democratic structures. They observe these motives and they offer alternatives to different models which contributed to the crisis we are living in today. The democratic type of governance and management calls upon us to be responsible. We need to be fully aware about economic trends. And in turn, we have to be responsible. We need to go beyond inequality. We need to focus on a just society. Every individual should also assume its share of responsibility on how our economy might develop in the future. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not just merely referring to theory of development. No. For quite some time, we have been seeing this development taking root in practice. These cooperatives have been officially recognized and they observe the principles of cooperatives. At this time, cooperatives are present within traditional sectors such as service, then banking, agriculture, etc. But in the past years, we have seen an emergence of new forms of areas and sectors. Cooperatives provided assistance and made sure that the weakest links of the society survived. For example, in Italy, we were the first, or rather, we are the most important actor among non-profitable cooperatives, and we provide social services. So we are the most important actor in the provision of social services. We are social cooperatives providing very successfully our services. We are extremely innovative, and we do believe that these cooperatives, in fact, should replace the public provision of services within the public sector. Then we also have workers' cooperatives. Their number is increasing. Why? Because companies declare bankruptcies, we have very high rate of unemployment. An increasing number of people is extremely motivated to network, to cooperate. And this goes beyond traditional forms of operation and organization of companies. As I have already indicated, cooperatives work for the common good. They pursue long-term objectives. For that reason, they work for the young, for future generations, for those who are just entering the labor market at present. A research institute from Trieste was commissioned by our organization Lega Coop. Their results reveal that more than 40% of the young people today believe or trust cooperatives. They also believe that cooperatives will grow, that they will become an increasingly important element of the economy in Italy. Then 50% of the youth believe that cooperatives are fair, that they observe regulations, and that they respect legislation. Some older generations have more prejudice when it comes to the operation of cooperatives, while the young people are increasingly aware of the positive impact of cooperatives. Then our survey also reveals that cooperatives are not too confined to individual sectors. We don't have just small companies, but we also have big companies, and cooperatives have been more resilient to crisis, also compared to some other SMEs. Especially in the times of crisis, cooperatives have proven to be extremely good employers because they have maintained the majority of jobs, and we know, on the other hand, what happened to the private and public sectors and relevant jobs. Moreover, throughout its history, cooperatives have been able to demonstrate that their rate of survival is very long, that they are very adaptable, very flexible, and sustainable. They are very successful, especially in times of challenges and great economic changes. Hence, we need to pay close attention, and we need to fight against the conditions in the public and private sector to prevail in cooperatives. I'm referring to corruption. Of course, we are not completely immune to corruption, which is why we need to fight even more resolutely when it comes to addressing corruptions among our own people. Then, we need to pay close attention to management styles on how to best cope with corruption and irregularities. Then further development of different models of companies is something which we also need to be very observant of. Then we need to address efficiencies. When it comes to the service sector, I have to tell you that as far as Italy is concerned, the cooperative sector is well developed, and it has also proved to be extremely innovative. This also goes for workers' cooperatives. I believe that the time is appropriate to be fully aware of our abilities, of our competencies, and that we confront challenges and problems when they persist. This, in fact, is an opportunity to think twice about our economic system. Social cooperatives have been able to show that it is quite possible to create a different system of social services, because Italy has extremely successful social cooperatives, and they're doing a good job, especially when compared to public companies in the sector. It is also very important to upgrade and develop social capital, which is responsible and which transfers responsibility to its owners, who need to provide high-quality services and products. We need to make sure that we have very just distribution of work as well as capital. A crisis introduced profound changes. The market is now fragmented. Therefore, I believe that we need to think about new ways of pooling risks and to make sure how we can contribute to greater security and safety. We need to develop better relations and boost cooperation between different stakeholders which are interdependent in an increasingly globalized world. Of course, we need to cooperate with the public sector as well. In turn, the public sector will need to find subcontractors for individual services. And this is where cooperatives can come in, because we are very efficient and successful in Italy. We need to think about that sustainable dimension. We need to take the destiny into our own hands. We need to take over our economic system. One of the biggest cooperatives in Italy is a cooperative, consumer cooperative. Currently, it supports certain innovative interventions at the Italian market. It has many fair trade programs. It is very active in the field of fair trade. It delivers high-quality goods and services. It makes sure that our distribution network is fair. We also have fair practices within our network, but we need to develop new forms of cooperation. We need to understand that we also can improve many services and products offered at the market. We can do so if we take it from the hands of other companies which are merely focused on profit. In order to do so, we need to increasingly raise awareness. And for that, we need new scenarios, we need new programs in order to tackle a crisis. In this way, we will successfully confront the challenges. Traditional sectors also are in need of innovation. This innovation will rest on cooperation. If we just think about safe food, if we think about an increasing need of food supplies throughout the world, we are increasingly aware that we need more agriculture, that we need more farmers who need to produce more so that we will be able to feed the entire world. But in order to achieve these results, we need to find new ways of cooperation and interaction. And we also need legislation, which in the past didn't favor cooperatives very much. In Italy, we have been quite fortunate to have a good constitution of 1945, which enabled us to develop the cooperative sector in all branches of economy. The role of information, the role of transfer of information is very important. So for every euro we invest in training, this helps us to invest in our future, which is better. We need to focus on such economic development which will be based on ethical values. We need to be fully aware of interdependence. Interdependence of our existence, and not just interdependence between governments and state. We need to operate in a just manner, and we need to be very democratic, also when it comes to our economies. A development component of cooperatives is the basic principle of our operation. In this way, cooperatives have been able to survive. We have been able to survive this time. I just have 1 minute, which is why I will briefly wrap it up. By way of conclusion now, it is a very important time for all of us. We have seen the emergence of the association of ACI, bringing together 3 historical unions of cooperatives, one of them being Lega Coop, I'm representing it, ACI, and the third one, Coop Nord-Est. This is a very important step forward. Today, the world is opening up. We are increasingly interdependent. Nobody can be isolated or excluded. Ultimately, all cooperatives, not just Lega Coop cooperatives, but all other cooperatives, as well as other companies, are now faced with a different reality. Italy has more than 80,000 cooperatives, employing more than 1.4 million people. 7.75% of Italian GDP is generated by the cooperative sector. Research institutes from Trieste published the first report where it was revealed that in the period from 2001 to 2011, the number of cooperatives grew by 14.2%. In fact, this only goes to show that cooperatives in times of a crisis suffered, however, that they were not made redundant. So the number of employees grew by 14% within this period. As for members and non-members of cooperatives, we have the number of employees amounting to 1.3 million. Throughout this period, the number of employees in other sectors, so non-cooperative sector, dropped, and we all know about that. In other words, cooperatives have been extremely more successful in different fields of activities. They even offered a new range of services during the period of crisis. 85% of employees in the economy have a contract for indefinite employment, and this is not the case when it comes to cooperatives. And we also have a very diverse landscape when it comes to enterprises and entrepreneurs. We have many small companies. On average, we have 3.3 employees on average in Italy, employed by one company, so from 3.3 to 5.5. As for the industry sector and the social sector, 50% of made in Italy products is generated by 100,000 employees. This is a part of the corporate world, and in the past they have been able to solve very well-established brands, which otherwise wouldn't be able to remain viable. The Italian image was not protected when it comes to entrepreneurship. However, cooperatives were very successful and resilient. And the second most important insurance group, which is a part of the Italian banking system, is in fact one exception. It is controlled by our association, Lega Coop. We also have banking and credit cooperatives, which have a very high number in Italy. Their number is more than 400. So they are integrated within our Lega Coop system. And then, of course, we also have the Italian Cooperative Association, the so-called Alleanza Italiana. Well, just 1 minute, if I may. By way of conclusion, I apologize. Just a couple of sentences. Generally speaking, the banking sector has had very negative results, while cooperatives were very successful also in the area of banking and construction. I could give you a list of all cooperatives in Italy, and probably you would have been surprised, because you will see that cooperatives can be found in all areas and sectors of economy. And often they have a turnover of more billion euro every year, and they employ many people. Of course, we had great problems, we confronted big challenges. Probably we are faced with even greater challenges in the future, but I'm convinced that this is the right mode of development. Cooperatives are omnipresent in Italy. They are part of our day-to-day reality, directly or indirectly. Cooperatives cooperate with the private as well as private sector. One provocative question which needs to be answered is, well, maybe perhaps cooperatives will be the new development and cooperative and economic model.